All right, well, let's talk more about this now. Joining us is Perianne, founder and CEO of the Chamber of Digital Commerce, which is a trade association representing the digital asset and blockchain industry. Perianne, great to see you again. As you look across the Atlantic towards the UK, how optimistic are you about Liz Truss and what she may ultimately bring for the crypto space?
Well, unfortunately, she has not shared in-depth perspectives on crypto. We don't really know her positions on specific policy matters related to digital assets. So there is some uncertainty. We do have one tweet from 2018, which she just threw up on the screen, where she said we should welcome cryptocurrencies in a way that doesn't constrain their potential. And that's definitely a positive statement. But at this time, it's too early to really know what direction she's going to take. There's a lot of major regulatory issues that are outstanding for the digital asset ecosystem. A lot of what we're doing in DC is around educating our public policymakers. So many of the challenges that we have really stem from the lack of understanding of how this technology works and how, in many cases, it does not fit into the traditional regulatory boxes that were built for the traditional financial system, like banks and other financial services companies. So we think this is an important time in the UK for the industry to educate the Prime Minister's office about this technology, and we encourage them to engage just like we are doing in Washington, D.C.
Perianne, just as we've been speaking on this show, we've actually seen a rolling over in some digital assets. Bitcoin is now down about 2.5%. We're trading at 19,250 or so. And even Ethereum, which has been outperforming, or Ether rather, ahead of the merge, is now only up about 1%. It was higher by as much as 5% earlier. So interesting price action as we get closer to the merge, which of course will bring the Ethereum network from proof of work to proof of stake, maybe solve some of the environmental equation that regulators sometimes pay attention to. But we know that there's a lot else going on that regulators have taken notice of, including certain stable coins. When we think about the regulation ongoing and those conversations in DC, I know you are involved in some of them. What is the shape looking like from the conversations you have had?
Well, first, I would really challenge the premise that proof of work has an environmental issue. I don't agree with that statement. We very much believe Bitcoin has the potential to help transition society from reliance on greenhouse gases to more reliable energy sources. And we're seeing that transition take place throughout the United States already. And the reason why Ethereum is merging away from proof of work to proof of stake has a lot more to do with how smart contracts platforms operate. So given that, a number of the policy discussions in Washington, D.C. and on Capitol Hill, energy is one piece of that, but you mentioned stable coins. So to give you an update on what's happening there, the House Financial Services Committee is currently working on legislation to bring stable coins under federal regulatory oversight, where either only banks could issue stable coins or non-banks, but under the Federal Reserve's authority. The text of that legislation has not been made available. We have been in conversations with the committee on this bill. There's parts of it that are incredibly promising because having a regulatory path forward could really spur institutional adoption into our industry. But this really needs to be done in a way that is not going to hinder innovation. And a one-size-fits-all approach really is not an appropriate path for such a dynamic space. So that is a huge priority for the committee, and we may see a markup for that this month.
Well, I wonder also how important it is to the Digital Chamber of Commerce to have a standard here. You know, the move that we've seen by Binance now to automatically swap USDC, Pax Dollar, and True USD, three of the leading stablecoins, for its own stablecoin, makes me think that eventually we're going to have, each exchange is going to have its own stablecoin. Each DeFi platform is going to require its own stablecoin. Each, yield generation scheme is going to require its own stablecoin. And then it's just too much. Don't you need, for industry's sake, to have one standard across the board?
Well, that would be a monopoly. And generally, we don't believe a one-size-fits-all approach is appropriate for an innovation economy. As a free market thinker, I think it's important to have options. There will be environments where certain types of stable coins will be more appropriate than others. You mentioned all of the exchanges potentially having their own stable coins. Many of them already do. A lot of the banks are also innovating in this space. I think it's very possible that banks will have their own stable coins. They may call them something different, a tokenized version of digital cash or something along the likes. And eventually they may all trade with each other, and they may all be interoperable with other digital assets like Bitcoin and Ether. But I think it is important that we have diversity so these assets can support many different applications and use cases, especially when we're still in such an early and nascent innovative stage of the ecosystem.
I mean, they're already just like 1,000 different converters for one kind of charger, the US dollar, right? Why don't we just have the central bank issue a stable coin so that we can, and when they do, because they will, right, get rid of all of these others?
They may. That decision has not been made yet. Many members of Congress had said it's really in Congress's authority to give the Fed the jurisdiction to be able to issue a central bank digital currency, which they don't have at this time. So there's still some legal pathways that have to be addressed before we can even discuss a CBDC being issued from the U.S. government. But again, having a one-size-fits-all approach, I think is not helpful in an innovation space. And there are a lot of critics against having a U.S. CBDC. People are concerned about privacy. You look at what's happening in China, what they built with the digital yuan. This is a surveillance system, like something we've never seen before. So, I think we need to proceed with caution and make sure that our American principles are baked into systems like this that protect our privacy and protect our security. And what the private sector has built in the stablecoin space is light years ahead anything any government has put forward to date.
All right, we have to leave it there, but thank you so much for joining us again, Perianne Boring, founder and CEO of the Chamber of Digital Commerce.